Support Smacking Off by commenting on, liking, and sharing our videos. Stay right where you are, more Smacking Off is headed your way.
I just received a marketing plan from a freelancer on Fiverr. It's great. And the way I'll present it will really take it to the next level. Check it out. Skills.
We're developing that with a freelancer and it's excellent. It's probably my feedback that made it so good.
And do you know who came up with the idea to use Fiverr? Liam. And who hired Liam? Me. Just to be clear.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto giro d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto giro d'amor.
Welcome, college football fans, to another weekly installment of
Your Team Sucks Donkey Balls
with Dr. Balls.
Balls, and we're here with our producer Doug Phillips and our special guest and key contributors Sean Devine and Alex Bryan, and your team sucks donkey balls, and we're going to tell you how and why. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you?
Doing well.
Oh,
good to hear from you.
Hell yeah. And they guys, I think that maybe we should start with Mark Stoops at Kentucky. What do you think, Doug?
Let me cue him up.
Cue him up. He's going to cue up coach number one. Let's start with him.
Oh, mamma mia. Lower some donkey balls on that machine.
Here, depending on who you believe. And basically, they hyped us up. They had one of the best defensive lines in the country, that the offensive line was much improved. And then they get crushed by South Carolina at home. And I think the quarterback is a bum. What do you guys think?
So this for me was one of those coin flip games anyway. When I did my SEC predictions, just because, I never know what to expect from South Carolina. Like, under Beamer's son, they've had some good moments and some bad moments. Same with Kentucky under Stoops. They've had some good and some bad moments. So this was a coin flip for me. I didn't see it being a blowout like it was, though. And Vandergriff, boy, 3 of 10 for 30 yards. My goodness. That's pretty abysmal for a guy who was a backup at Georgia at one point. I expected more. But Kentucky would be fine. I mean, if you look at their schedule, they got Georgia next. So that's probably a loss. A couple games from now, they got Ole Miss. They got Tennessee and Texas. So, I mean, at this point, they could still finish like 7-5, which is about what probably people thought they would finish anyway, 8-4, 7-5. So goals are still in front of them. I mean, they were never making the college football playoff anyway. So Mark Stoops can coast on winning 7 to 9 games a year and be fine at Kentucky because they're a basketball school. That's all they give a fuck about anyway.
What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, that's great points. I agree with you, Dr. Balls, that the quarterback is abysmal. So if you guys went through the NIL process to get that guy, I hope you guys get a refund because it's just terrible. It's just a terrible quarterback. So you have no passing game, and the O-line isn't getting it done with the running game. But I completely agree with Alex. I did not see this being a beatdown. I thought it would be a close game. Could go either way. But yeah, no, I mean, definitely time for Stoops to rally the guys, and they got to play better because this is not acceptable. He's got to win at least 7 or 8 games.
How much does he make, Robert?
He makes somewhere between $7 and $9 million a year.
Ooh,
on how things
shit.
play. Yeah, that's what the
Man.
problem is that they
Wow.
haven't developed any quarterbacks, and this guy's obviously a bum. And they got a guy named Winslet that played for Rutgers that came in the game and actually did pretty well, even though he threw a pick. At least he was able to hear. Now, I don't know if anybody saw any of that game or any of the footage, but what happened is when he went to do the drop back, as soon as he seen any pressure whatsoever, he immediately juked to one side or another, and it was usually the side the blitz was coming from. And all he had to do was get rid of the ball or deliver it right off the bat. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't under pressure, right? He was under immense pressure, but he was flinching right off the bat, and he was, as soon as he got the ball from the snap, he juked to one side. It usually was the side the blitz come from. He was panicked, guys. And I don't know.
He better get it together because he's got to face his former team this coming week. And boy,
we're going to be trouble for Kentucky next week. That could be a rough watch.
Yeah.
So tell me if I'm wrong, Robert, but if I'm a Kentucky fan, man, I got to feel like this was a major step backwards.
Oh, absolutely. That's why that I have nominated these guys. And sorry, guys, we were supposed to leave Colorado, but the reason I got stuck on these guys is just so stinking pathetic for the money that's being paid, the kind of talent that's on the team. I think that Alex is right that they were probably 66 or 75. They'll produce some NFL linebackers and a couple defensive linemen, but other than that, they're just not. And here's what really killed them. So before Kentucky was able to hide behind the schedule and play their cupcakes early, right? Then they get Florida, right? Probably around the time we're getting Georgia next week, and they'd be ready after having played 2 or 3 cupcakes to beat Florida, and then have another game they can coast on. So they were 5-0 going into the season. Then they would lose their first game, right? And then it'd be panic mode, and they pick one random game up, and then at the end of the year they beat Louisville. So I think Stoops' whole future this year depends on whether or not they beat a ranked Louisville team.
Yeah,
maybe so.
Very true. And if they could somehow, go to Tennessee and pull off one there, or Ole Miss, even if they can win one of those games, he could save himself. But even though, like I said, like 7 to 9 wins he could coast on that. This is the SEC. And I think if he goes any worse than 7-5, Kentucky might start looking at him like, maybe we should move on. I just don't know who they get if they do let him go, though.
John Summerall, who's now at Tulane, is probably who'd be the coach would be.
You gotta feel like they could get somebody cheaper to do the same thing he's doing.
I was gonna say $7 to $9 million for Stoops he's grossly overpaid.
Now, there's rumblings about Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer to Kentucky?
Yeah, here's why here's what the rumblings say. Now, this isn't internet stuff. I know sports writers in Huntington, Louisville, Lexington, and Cincinnati, and a couple of little small eastern Ohio towns, right? And the rumblings among them is that he wants to rehabilitate himself, and he thinks it'll put him on GOAT level to bring back Kentucky to a level they've never been before. And he thinks he can recruit Cincinnati, Columbus, Louisville, the whole Golden Triangle, all the way over to Illinois. So, which would be good recruiting, guys. I know you're an Ohio State guy, Alex, and if you win Cincinnati, that's not bad for Kentucky. Would you not agree?
Hey, Alex got booted off. He said, I don't know if he's coming back, but he said it booted him.
Damn,
it'd be interesting if you get Urban Meyer. I just don't see that happening. I
don't see it happening either. That would be corruption.
I don't think Kentucky really wants to deal with that, despite how badly they want to win.
Barnhart's capable of stuff.
All right, so hold up 1 second, guys.
Oh, mamma mia. Lower some donkey balls.
Right. Marcus Freeman. Well, unfortunately, Sean, your team sucks donkey balls. And Notre Dame is America's team in many respects to many people. So if they suck donkey balls, that's a real problem, right? And it's interesting, though, that NIU, like Marshall last year, is a great team when they are AA level or whatever you want to call them these days. But they it's a tough loss.
They're bona fide group of 5. They're in the MAC.
Yeah. So so that's a tough loss, but NIU's a tough team. And but the fact that they couldn't move the ball, that Leonard wasn't able to pass it and advance it in the downhill pass, which the downfield pass was invented by Notre Dame.
Yeah, no, that's 2 games in a row where he's just not a very good passing quarterback. He's mobile, he can move, but he's made some throws that weren't even close. They weren't in the neighborhood. That's so we have the opposite of, we had a guy we brought in from Wake Forest last year with NIL who could throw the ball accurately, but he couldn't move. And now we have a guy who can move, but he can't throw the ball accurately. So you have that problem. And then on top of it, this is another, it kind of started with, if we go way back in the time machine, Charlie Weiss, when we first lost to Navy in 07. And it kind of, it's hung around like athlete's foot with Brian Kelly's era and then, now Freeman, where you might win a big game one week and then, the next week to a very lesser opponent, you lay an egg. And, you speak to that with, Brian Kelly losing to Tulsa at home. That was a bad loss. South Florida, and like you said, Marshall last year, now Northern Illinois University. So I think it's a microcosm to a bigger problem of not. This is why, we talk about Notre Dame being very good, but not on that elite level. And elite level teams don't lose at home to Northern Illinois. It's a problem, and I think it speaks to, again, 2 years in a row you're going through the transfer portal to get a quarterback instead of recruiting and developing your own. Which I know they got a couple guys behind him that are recruiting, and depending if they lose to Purdue this weekend, let's see them. Let's see what we got.
So what is Freeman's offensive philosophy? I mean, it's hard for me to identify. I see him with
He was a defensive coordinator, so he really doesn't have an offensive philosophy. He was saddled with his first year with Tommy. Doug knows who I'm talking about.
Golden?
No, Tommy
Reese.
Tommy Reese.
Tommy
yeah.
Reese.
Yeah. Excuse me. Long day of traveling. Tommy Reese's first year, and that was a kind of a contentious, relationship because Reese played there. He's the hot up and coming guy, and I think he wanted that job, and so the next year he leaves and heads to Alabama, and they had a different guy in who was terrible last year, who I'm also drawing a blank. But now this year the institution went out and they brought in coordinators that are damn good coordinators. You have Al Golden as a defensive coordinator who before this, he was part of the Cincinnati Bengals who went to the Super Bowl that year, which you remember, Dr. Balls.
Oh, yeah.
So we brought him in and paid him good money. And then this offseason, you go down to LSU and get Mike Denbrock to be your offensive coordinator. So, and this is Freeman's first head coaching job as a whole. And I have, strong philosophy against that Notre Dame being an on-the-job kind of spot. That's another argument for another day. But, it's a combination of things. It's one, how is the offensive line? You lose guys to the NFL. If you're really a truly elite pro, you're not, you got to have some depth. And you're starting true freshmen on the offensive, right out of, they were playing high school last year. They've been on campus maybe 6 months. That's indicative of poor recruiting.
What's going to make you? What's going to make you mad, Sean?
What's that?
They're going to get against a much better team this year and beat their ass. Watch.
Yeah. I'm sure.
That's
USC, USC at the end of the year.
It might be USC. It might be Louisville. Who knows? He can get the team up for a big game. We saw that down at A&M. They were ready to play, and they played their tail off. They were, and we talk about the old Nick Saban talking about rat poison, and that's what Freeman said this week, essentially, in his presser. But this is happening too often.
Marcus Freeman confuses me. Obviously his first 2 years he has to play Ohio State. Both were very competitive games. Him losing those is whatever. Obviously him being a first and second year head coach during those games, not many people are going to say, well, Notre Dame should win that one, right? But then that he loses that one to Marshall, and I gave him a pass on that because that came right after the first Ohio State game. And it was like, well, they put everything they had into trying to beat Ohio State, and they sleptwalk into that one. Lose to a pretty good Marshall team that year, so that's
later in that season he lost the game to Stanford.
Yeah, that Stanford one, I was scratching my head on that. I'm like, I get Stanford's. Aren't they technically a rival, right?
Yes. They played for a rival.
Okay, but still, obviously,
it was at home though. It's at home.
Yeah,
the offense was similar to the Northern game. Can't score, can't move the ball.
They should have been able to win those two games. I can give them a pass on Marshall, not so much on Stanford. But we move on to the next season, right? Then he loses to Ohio State again, literally off of one play at the end of the game. I've told Sean this. I would trade losing that game for beating the team up north 10 times out of 10. But
and the way he lost it, it wasn't. It was
boneheaded.
You're the defensive coordinator, and the play you got to get a stop. You get that stop, we win the game.
Yep.
And you get 10 men on the field.
Yeah, and that was
cannot happen.
That was the second time that happened in the 3 games of the season at that point.
Yeah.
So
and then you have the team not ready at all for Louisville.
Yeah.
You got the score doesn't kind of say so, but they got their ass kicked in it.
And obviously Louisville ended up being a good team. And to Notre Dame's credit, they had played how many games in a row without a bye week at that point? They were pretty.
That was their 5th game in a row. Yeah,
they were pretty exhausted. But I saw some growth from Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame by the end of the season last year. So you come into this year and you look at their schedule. I looked at their schedule. I had them 12-0, and I was like, I got to give them a loss somewhere. So I put it USC at the end of the year just because I was like, well, it's at USC. Maybe they'll drop that one, but they'll go 11-1. What I saw last Saturday, there was no urgency ever from anybody at Notre Dame. No
energy, no motivation.
I couldn't believe, especially before halftime, they had a chance. They had the ball back. They had a chance to drive and score a touchdown to take the lead in the halftime. And they just crawled their way to even trying to get any points on the board. And then, of course, they missed that field goal. And then they're like, okay, this kicker isn't that great. They're going to have to rely on, getting Riley Leonard in the run game or something to score some touchdowns. And then they just
blame is he's trusting his offensive coordinator. On the one drive that we actually looked decent, our best, talented player is tailback Jeremiah Love. And on that drive, he got the ball, I think, 6 times.
Oh,
and we scored a touchdown. The rest of the game, guess how many carries he got?
Probably 4.
1.
Honestly, Sean, it's funny you mentioned him because I was literally saying, I on one of my dynasties on CFB 25, I'm Notre Dame right now. I'm undefeated, by the way. And it's a league of 17 people, myself included. And the guy I use the most to get points on the board is Jeremiah Love. He's fast as fuck. And I'm watching this game at my buddy's aunt's house, and I'm telling my buddy Richard, I'm like, this number 4, they got to get him involved more. I'm like, he is such a weapon. He's quick, he's agile, he makes guys miss. Why aren't they getting him? It's like they don't have near enough design to get this guy out in space. And the second I said that, a couple plays later, they got him out in space and he went for a huge gain. Yeah. I'm like, this guy is so good.
And the reason I'm blaming Freeman, you're the head coach,
as you should.
You gotta be cognitive. Tell the offensive coordinator, I need more Jeremiah Love here.
Yeah. I get it. Notre Dame doesn't have top tier receivers right now. That's coming down the pipeline in their future recruiting classes.
Well, they lost 2 of them in the recruiting wars this year that people flipped.
But you have the weapons you have now, you're not even using. And like Sean said, it was just such uninspired football. There was no urgency, not even in the fourth quarter. Really, was there urgency to go win the game?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Freeman, I know from a recruiting standpoint and stuff that you were taking Notre Dame in the right direction, but you're forgetting the here and now in a lot of these games against lesser opponents. Like, a lot of people shit on Ryan Day, and I get it, rightfully so. He hasn't beat Team Up North in 3 years. And they're all like, well, all he does is beat the teams he's supposed to beat. Well, that's a pretty important part of coaching.
That's a very important part of it. Absolutely.
And
I would have rather, I'll tell you this right now. I would have rather lost the A&M game close.
Oh, yeah.
And then come home and just dog walked NIU.
That's the most head-scratching part.
The optics of that are completely different than the optics of paying Northern Illinois $1.4 million to come into your house and beat you. That's a terrible look.
And Sean, that's
a 4-point loss or a 3-point loss in College Station.
Yeah.
People would go, yeah, that's a tough place to play. They're on the road first game of the year.
And Sean, that's the most head-scratching part to me is after that A&M game, I had Notre Dame winning that game. And we talked about it on the Buckeye Bros show. I said Marcus Freeman grew up after that Saturday. Like, that's the next step he needed to take. He went into a hostile environment and won a big game. A&M might not end up being great at the end of the year, but in that moment, that was such a huge game for him to win. And it's like if you had played Purdue after that and lost, totally get that, because we all know what Purdue does at Purdue, right?
It's in Purdue. It's at West Lafayette.
This team, this moment against a MAC team at home, boy.
Yeah. Some of the older Notre Dame fans and Doug, I can remember, Marcus Freeman has shades of Jerry Faust. He's a nice guy who could get up and win a big game against a big opponent, and then he'd have a head-scratching loss at home to like Air Force.
Yeah,
and Jerry Faust could recruit players. I mean, you go back to look at some of his teams. He had plenty of guys that ended up playing in the NFL, but their seasons under Faust would be 5-6, 7-4, 4-7. You know, like and you just. And those were, at least with Faust back in that was 81 to 85. Those were like heavy hitting Notre Dame schedules where the only easy game was an Air Force and a Navy maybe, and the rest were all power teams. This is a very, after the A&M game, basically a manageable schedule, but for Louisville and USC. I don't think we think FSU is anything anymore. And Georgia Tech just got exposed by Syracuse.
Yeah. If there was any trap games when I was looking preseason, I was like, okay, maybe Navy. Like, Navy always tends to play tough, right? And I looked at that Louisville game as a maybe, and the USC as the only loss I gave them. But
now every game is going to be.
He has to win out now.
Like,
there's no room for error.
If he said this week, he's sticking with Leonard. I just, to me, the kid didn't have it at all.
I talked to you about that preseason too. I said they should just start Carr now.
Carr, or even the guy that I want to see that's kind of hidden in there is Kenny Minchie.
Yeah,
let's see what we got. What do we have?
I get the whole bringing in Trent, but like bringing in the guy you did last year, whose name is escaping me, Sam
Hartman.
Yeah, bringing in him made a lot of sense last year. He didn't have the year I thought he would have, but he was the type of like leader I felt Notre Dame needed for that season.
I agreed with that one because you knew he wasn't mobile, but at the time you had two guys that were ultimately. Yeah, one was a first-round NFL draft pick at left tackle, and the other guy I think was a second or third-round guy.
So you had to make the most of that with an experienced quarterback,
and we needed an accurate quarterback for the deficiency at the recruiting at wide receiver. So that one made sense.
But bringing in Riley Leonard didn't make sense to me at all. I'm like, he wasn't that great at Duke.
He was great enough. He had the one miracle win over Clemson as they started the year last year, and then
But I don't know.
Donkey balls.
Yeah, he needs to win out now, obviously. And
donkey balls.
I don't think his job is, and that's not what I'm saying. I don't.
Yeah,
think,
but even at that point, like, let's say there's not enough. Let's say there's plenty of one-loss teams to put in. Then Notre Dame gets looked at that one loss and they get left out. So they got to pray a lot of teams lose 2 or more, and they got to win out to guarantee them a spot.
Yeah, I mean, we need that. We need to win out. We need a lot of 2-loss teams. And
USC looks to be great, so if you win that game, that's huge.
USC and Louisville to keep kind of winning. Otherwise, this schedule's absolutely.
I think USC will. I think USC's pretty good right now.
And hell, I don't have any faith that we win that game.
All right,
as of right now, I don't blame you.
Watching USC they look legitimate. They look very legitimate.
Yeah.
All right, let me open door number 3, guys.
Yeah, let's see door
Oh,
number 3.
mamma mia. Lower some donkey balls on that mashed cheese.
Oof.
Oof. So behind door number 3, we got Hugh Freeze. Well,
Hugh Freeze is a head scratcher. Obviously one of the only coaches to dethrone Saban a couple times, or beat, whatever you want to call it, a couple times.
Come down close to a third time.
Yeah, I don't think
for a miracle play by Milroe and Auburn being asleep, they'd probably win that game.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, like, realistically, unless you're an Auburn fan, thought you hire him, all of a sudden you're going to win the SEC. But you certainly don't hire him and say, well, we're going to lose to Cal.
Well, he already lost to New Mexico State.
Yeah,
Cal's better than him.
Yeah, it's been a head scratching tenure thus far. You got to wonder, did Auburn go full on Nebraska when it came to Gus Malzahn and just pushed him out when they absolutely shouldn't have? Like, you had it pretty good with Gus Malzahn at this rate.
Well, this guy certainly can't develop a quarterback. I mean, that's, to me, the reason they suck donkey balls is you putting Peyton Thorne out there. He at least had a line that blocked for him a little bit, and he couldn't do a thing. It's some of the worst-looking passing. He didn't even get close. I mean, even when he made the right read, he was throwing the ball behind people, over top of them, multiple interceptions.
Well, their first mistake was getting Peyton Thorne, and then their second mistake was starting him another year.
He's like very, very bad.
He's not good. They never should have gotten him anyway. And I mean, there's just no positives to having him. They need to go, like, they got all these wide receivers that they're recruiting. Get yourself a half decent quarterback that can just go out there and manage a game. Like, you don't need Cam Newton. You just need like a Jarrett Stidham or something.
That's the Bo Nix curse. So they run Bo Nix off.
Yeah. You had Bo Nix and you wasted him, and then look what he went and did. Went to Oregon and showed out. I mean,
come down close to winning the Heisman, didn't he?
And he was an Auburn legacy. So it's like, what are you guys doing? You know, you got to get yourself a half decent quarterback. But
when Freeze fails, which he will. I mean, who is next? Who will they turn to next? That they will
rehire Gus Malzahn. You say you're sorry. You beg for forgiveness.
They probably should. I mean, nobody's done better than Malzahn.
And now Nick Saban is gone. So, like, he doesn't even have to beat him. He just has to go and beat Kirby whenever they play.
Yeah, they had all those years where they could blame. Well, Nick Saban's the GOAT right down the street.
But Malzahn beat him, 3 times, right?
And I think he beat him once or twice. I don't know about 3, but, I mean, either way.
He beat him the most, I believe, out of any coach.
No, he definitely beat him 3 times.
Yeah. So, I mean.
He beat him in 13, he beat him in 17, and he beat him in, was it 19?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did a solid job, you know, as solid as you can be for an Auburn coach in the rivalry's sake. So you just beg for forgiveness, get on your knees, blow him like Harsin got blown by that chick. You do whatever you need to fucking do. Get him back and get him back at Auburn, and now you don't have to worry about Saban. You just got to worry about Kirby. So
Auburn and Kentucky are playing each other. Auburn and Kentucky are playing each other here, 3 or 4 weeks. So that's going to be
an awesome bad game. I'm excited.
The donkey ball bowl.
Yeah. Who sucks the most donkey balls?
Yeah.
Out of those.
All right, Alex. Alex, I'm going to open door number 4, especially for you.
Oh, mamma mia. Lower some donkey balls on that machine.
Oh boy, I love this. First of all, hook 'em. Thank you, Texas, for what was just a gift that kept on giving. Obviously, I was praying for like 50 points minimum, and they could have. They went a little easy on them after a bit, but God, Texas just did not just America, but the world a favor on Saturday. And credit to the Texas fans. They pulled in Ohio State and took over the big house. There were so many Texas fans there. It was almost like a home game for them.
Led by Matthew McConaughey running up and down the
all right. Like, God bless that man.
That was awesome.
And obviously, and I won't even call him a former Buckeye because he technically never lost his black stripe. So that's like your initiation into being a Buckeye. But he did wear the scarlet and gray at one point, and he calls them the team up north. So just all credit to Quinn Ewers for an amazing game and Steve Sarkisian for an amazing game plan. Sherrod Moore, he says he's on contract. The AD says he's not on contract. Nobody can get their shit straight up north. I just read today that their like famous store on campus, the M Den, is filing for bankruptcy because Ward Manuel held on to a check and then it got bounced. So now they're losing a famous retail store because of just sheer stupidity all across that campus. And you know, I can see why they're not ready to really sign a contract for Sherrod Moore, because boy, that's Iowa-esque offense this year. I was told though that losing all those players would not matter, that they would still be just as dominant. 10 wins at worst, probably 12-0. I was told. But now all of a sudden it's, well, we lost so many guys on offense, you know. So why does that matter now? Sean, why does that matter now?
I mean, I was hearing the same. We'll be fine. You know, we don't rebuild. We just
4 straight guaranteed.
No,
against Ohio State and the Big Ten.
This is big time trouble for them, and it's probably a good thing he's not on contract because that team was not prepared at all.
Yeah, why would you want to commit to this guy when he's going to be a part of the NCAA hammer that's going to come down, and it will come down at some point. And I see Wolverine media trying to gloss it up like there's nothing big coming. There's a lot of big coming, okay? And Sherrod Moore's going to be a part of it because he was part of the cheating. He knew, and why commit to a guy that you're going to?
It'll come out when it comes out, you know. And I agree with you. Just looking at their schedulers, I mean, 8-4 might be tough to get to.
That USC game, I had them winning that before the season, but now that's a loss. That is absolutely a loss. They are not beating USC now. And then obviously, I don't know what to think about Oregon. Good Lord, they've been all over the place so far through 2 games. They're lucky to be 2-0.
Let's talk a little bit about prime time before we head out.
Yes. Fuck Sherrod Moore and fuck the team up north.
So I want to give a little time to Dion because he talks so much smack, and because of the fact that he does silly stuff like hell, they can't play the fight song when they score. Right now they got to play his son's rap song. I mean, so basically the reason I think that his team sucks donkey balls and your team sucks donkey balls if you're Colorado is because Dion is out for Dion, right? And when Shadur Sanders is gone, he'll be gone too. And the train wreck it'll left behind.
I totally agree.
Will be deep and thick and fat like a
nepotism is the burden here. Nepotism is the burden here, and like I feel like honestly, without his kids, he could be a good coach for Colorado, but he's got to change his mindset when it comes to actually recruiting kids. Like it's not Jacksonville State where you can just be who you are and get kids to come there. Like you got to actually, actually recruit.
He's the exact opposite of what we talked about last week with Dabo, who refuses to use the transfer portal.
Yeah,
Dion is way too much. What they said, they had 48 new players this year.
Yeah, what a turnover!
And one of the biggest things we got
cohesion.
one of the biggest things we got to remind ourselves of is the team usually takes on the identity of the quarterback. And the quarterback is pointing to everybody but himself. I get it. The offensive line sucks again.
That offensive line is dreadful.
But you have some blame in this too, Shooter Sanders. You aren't out here making the best decisions with the football like you should be, maybe. And his attitude is just going to trickle down and kill any possible team cohesion, like Sean said, of being formed. And the problem is Deion's not going to do a damn thing about it because that's his kid. So what's he going to say? He can't say that.
I feel bad for the longtime Colorado fans who thought they might have a chance of being good again. And frankly, I just see them being the same this year, 4-8.
Hey, last year was worse. I mean, after they beat TCU last year, there was a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people. They were saying that Colorado was going to the CFP.
And Nebraska.
I was trying to tell people this team has improved, but please, you're gonna kill the mood because they're fixing to start. They're gonna go on a losing.
I'll say this: after they won those 3 of their first 4 games or whatever it was, I had put money on the win total for it was 3.5 or whatever. Yeah. And I put money on the win total, and I was I'm gonna cruise to this.
Stanford sucked their soul out.
they made me sweat out that bet. I ended up winning it, obviously, because it was 3.5 and they got 4. But they made me sweat it out the rest of the year.
And correct me if I'm wrong in that Stanford, weren't they up at like 28?
They were up a lot. And then that one tight end just kept getting open, and they kept feeding that kid, and they couldn't stop him. I'm like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, well, guys, I have to run, and we'll see which way the donkey balls bounce next week, and I'm sure that we'll have a nice little list for you next week. And hey, y'all hang around long enough to hear our new outro, okay?
Yep. All right.
All right.
Later, y'all.
Talk to you later, guys.
Later.
Your team sucks, donkey ball. Your team sucks, donkey ball. You're probably getting fired before the season's end. May even lose your wife and your asshole friend.
Your Team Sucks Donkey Balls is a presentation of Smacking Off the podcast. Stream in every week for another victim as we kick them while they are down.